Wendy Griffith is a senior reporter and anchor for CBN, the Christian Broadcast Network. She is also an author of 2 books, Praying the News and You Are a Prize to Be Won. And I am blessed to call her my friend. Welcome, Wendy Griffith. I am so happy to have you on my show today. It is such an honor and just such a pleasure to have you on here to talk about your book.
Hey, Christy, I just love your accent. I think I'm going to start speaking West Virginian, because I'm from West Virginia, and I love hearing your accent.
I do know that we are from neighboring towns, very small towns, and we are right at the same age. I think there's a year difference between our ages, and you went to a neighboring high school. I remember the rivalry that our football teams had, our basketball teams had. I think we were better in football, and you guys would kill us in basketball every year.
We live for basketball.
We live for football.
The Williamson Wolfpack, that high school's not even there anymore.
No, I know.
But the maroon and white will live on forever in my heart.
That's right. And we were green and gold, Mate One Tigers. And yeah, like I said, we had a huge rivalry, and now they've consolidated the 4 high schools and made them all one. So now everybody, plays together on one team. So, but before we jump into the interview, I wanted to ask you, how did you go from such a tiny town in Williamson, West Virginia, to being an anchor woman on CBN, the Christian Broadcast Network?
Wow, that's a God story, because there was only a couple of radio stations in Williamson. There were no TV stations back then. I mean, where I lived on the border of West Virginia and Kentucky, let's see, the nearest TV station was in Charleston, which was about a 3.5-hour drive. And so there was no opportunity to be an intern or anything like that in high school. So I did what I could. I got into drama. I wrote for the Pack Post, the high school newspaper. And then I just thought, when I get to college, so I went to WVU and I majored in broadcast journalism. And I got a job at the campus radio station, U92, the Moose. And that was really my first time broadcast, getting in front of a microphone. And I loved it. I mean, I knew radio was not my final destination, but it was a good place to start. And it was a lot of fun because I got to a lot of the football players were the DJs. So they were like on one side of the glass, spinning the records. And I was on the other side of the glass doing the news breaks. And so it was a lot of fun. And, but once I graduated with my degree, I didn't know what to do because there were no jobs around in West Virginia. I mean, I was an intern at a station in Clarksburg, West Virginia, a very tiny little station, and they didn't have any job openings. So I flew. I'm telling the long version. I'm trying not to, but the bottom line is, I ended up in Arizona, and I got a job waitressing, and I was about ready to have to come back to West Virginia with no job in TV, and kind of feeling defeated. But I had a hunch that I should take my tape around, my videotape, and visit some of the smaller towns. So I went to Yuma, Arizona. It's one of the smallest TV markets in the country. The Bible says, do not despise the day of small beginnings. So this was a small beginning, but thankfully the news director saw some potential in me, and he hired me at 10 hours a week, $4 an hour, to run chyrons and tapes, not even to be on the air. And I took it immediately, even though it was a lot less money than I was making as a waitress in Phoenix. So, but I knew I just needed to get my foot in the door. And a month later, they promoted me to the noon anchor with no experience. And that was fun and scary, but that's how it started. I mean, there was no one that said, here's a job right out of college. It just there was a lot of little baby steps and walks of faith. And I wasn't really walking with the Lord back then, but looking back, I still see God's hand in it and giving me that youthful faith, that I'm going to do this. I'm going to somehow, some way, I'm going to get my foot in the door. And I did.
I'm glad you said that, because I have said for years that I can look back at my life and see God laced throughout everything that's ever happened to me. Even though he was there when I wasn't there for him, he was there for me. So I completely understand you saying that you didn't have him in your life really, but that he had a hand in everything in your life.
He did.
And that's fantastic. And you mentioned going to Arizona. Is that where you developed a love of hiking? I know from reading your book, you love to hike. Is that where you first started hiking, or?
Actually, I think it was born when I was about 10 years old, and my parents took us to took the Smoky Mountains in Knoxville, Tennessee. We lived in Knoxville. So we hiked this peak called Mount LeConte that's 6,000 feet in the air. And that's pretty high. It was so memorable. It was so fascinating. I think that's where my love for hiking actually started, but I didn't get real serious about the high elevation climbs until about 8 years ago. And 7 or 8 years ago when I did Kilimanjaro. So, that was amazing. And then I did Everspace Camp and some others, but I love hiking. I love the mountains. I'm from the mountain state, and we've got some pretty mountains here in Virginia too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you'll have to come back to Mount LeConte, because I live very close to there. I live in East Tennessee. Yeah, I live 20 minutes outside of Pigeon Forge. And
oh my gosh.
A few minutes from Knoxville. So you'll have to come back and teach me how to. I don't know if I can hike Mount LeConte, but I can go as far as I can go with you.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That would be something to hike that again after all these years. I remember even then it was challenging. And I remember it being kind of like vertical. My mom was 6 months pregnant. So she did it. She did it 6 months pregnant. So
wow.
we can do it, Christy.
It is. It's really high up there. But anyway, the reason that I wanted to have you on today is because I read your book. You Are a Prize to Be Won. And Wendy, I cannot even explain to you how that book touched my heart. And I certainly don't want to cry on the air, but you wrote my story. That was my story. Aww. And there's so many things in there that I related to. And can you tell the audience just a little bit about how that book came to be? Just explain to the audience about your book.
You mean this book?
Yes, absolutely.
You Are a Prize to Be Won. God told me to write about my test. I went through I don't want to say horrible breakup, but it was, for me, I had never experienced that level of pain before. So, everybody has, I hear some other people's stories. I'm like, no, yours was worse. And some others, yours wasn't. But for me, it was the worst pain I've ever been through. And I think God was, he told me, write about your test. I thought this guy that I'd been dating for only a year, but it was, pretty intense. I'd waited to meet somebody, and he was a Christian, tall, dark, and handsome. And, he checked a lot of the boxes. And I thought, he was the one. Now, it's funny though, because looking back, I think I still had this doubt, but I so wanted him to ask me. I wanted the fairy tale. I mean, I was willing to overlook the red flags, and there were more than a few that I write about. I was willing to overlook those because I wanted the fairy tale so bad. I was 47. I was 46 when I met him, and then 47 when we dated. And, I wanted the bridal shower. I wanted the wedding. I wanted the honeymoon. I wanted the celebrations. I wanted that. And I felt like I had been patient. I'd been happy for all my friends, and my two sisters and everybody else had gotten married. And it was like, it's my turn, God, but it wasn't to be. And so I went through this, I lost this dream, and it was like, it was so devastating. And God said, write about your test. And as I began to write the chapters, it just flowed out of me. And I could just feel the Holy Spirit with me as I was writing, all the different chapters. And the title of the book actually it's a rhema word that God spoke to me years ago, even before I had met that guy. And he had told me, you are a prize to be won, which basically means that, well, it means what it says. You are that prize, and you don't have to be like a chicken with your head cut off, running around like crazy, trying to find the one. The Bible says he who finds a wife finds a good thing. And it's the man's job to pursue. And so God had been telling me, but I still didn't know my worth. So this book was born out of a lot of pain, but you read it. So, there's a lot of funny stories and there's a lot of humor, because even there's a fine line between, tears and laughing, and God helped me to see the humor as well. And there should never be a but after I love you. That's what it says on the back.
Absolutely. You know what, Wendy, that hit me so hard, because I have been in a relationship before, without going into my personal life, where I'm telling you, almost the exact same thing happened with me. It really felt as if you were writing my story.
Wow.
And it just resonated so deeply with me. And I cried several times while reading it. And I kept saying, this lady's writing my life. How many other women have told you that same thing too?
Too many to recount, but it never gets old. I love that, because, at the time I told God, okay, I'm going to write this book, but it's never going to be worth, I don't know why I said this to God. Like, I don't care how great the book does. It's never going to be worth the pain I went through. So it took about 3 years and about, 10,000 emails from women saying just what you said. This book helped me. It changed my life. It got me out of a toxic relationship. One girl said it saved her life. It was like, okay, I finally surrendered and said, God, it was worth it, because, God doesn't waste our pain. And of course now I'm happily married. So, which is another story. But at the time I just thought, I'm never going to feel right again. And, but God told me this season will end. So if anybody out there is listening and you're going through heartbreak, let me just assure you, this season will end. So that was, I just had to hang on to every promise from God that he was giving me during that time. Christy, he told me, you didn't miss it. He said, it's not too late. And one time he even told me, I was complaining to him saying, God, I wasted that year with this guy and it didn't, he wasn't the one. And, now I'm a year older or 2 years older. And God said, well, that's right. But now I'm going to give you my best. So God wasn't denying the fact that, yeah, you're getting older. Yeah. Well, he didn't say a waste of time, because I don't think it was wasted time at all. But I'll never forget when God said, now I'm going to give you my best. It was sort of like, did I just hear that? It was, and that was in 2014. I didn't meet Bill until 2017. So, but it was my lifeline. I hung on to that. It was a word, faith comes by hearing, not just a preacher preach, but it comes by hearing God speak directly to your spirit. And if you're waiting on the one, if you're waiting on a promise from God, the best advice I can give you is, spend that quality time in prayer, get quiet before the Lord, ask God questions, and let him tell you things that are going to help you hold on, because it might not happen the next day. When you hear a word like that, though, now I'm going to bring you my best. You're like, is he sitting next to me on the airplane? I was literally on an airplane when I heard that word from the Lord. And so, your heart is like, oh my gosh, it's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen. But it was still, 2.5, 3 years. But I had something to hold on to. And that helped my faith, because I believe, our faith, when we're expecting it, when we're believing for it, that releases the blessing. So, and it came to pass.
Wendy, I wanted to ask you, during those 3 years when God spoke to you and said, I have the best waiting for you, until you met the best, Bill, your husband, how did you keep from being discouraged and being disheartened? Because I know that waiting for me, and I think for everybody, is the hardest part of any journey. It's that waiting. And I know that during that waiting, that's where we learn to trust God. So how did you continue to trust God without being disheartened?
I would have days of extreme faith, and then I would have days where, yes, I would lose hope, but I had a friend, and I have a friend. Her name is Rhonda, and in my new book, I'm dedicating a whole chapter to her, because when I would get there, when I would lose hope, when I would be like, Lord, I just wouldn't understand, why are you taking so long, God? And what am I doing wrong? What do I need to do? I would call Rhonda, and Rhonda would always pray for me. And she would always give me the scripture, Psalm 84:11, God will not withhold any good thing from those who walk uprightly, from his children, And so I would, every time, no matter how low I was, I'd be crying, I'd be like screaming, like, even I would even get mad at Rhonda. Well, you're happily married. You can't possibly know how I feel right now, And she, bless her heart, she was patient with me. And she said, Wendy, God is working. Don't give up. He will not withhold any good thing from you. And by the time I would get off the phone with her, and I just feel the Holy Spirit all over me right now, it's like, by the time I would get off the phone with her, I would feel happy. I'd feel, like my confidence, like, yeah, God's definitely going to do this. I would have that faith, because we do need, two are better than one, not just in marriage, but in life. I don't know if I would be here now, happily married now, without Rhonda. God knew that I needed her. I met her after the book came out. I met her in 2014 through another friend. I was in Nashville at the time, and it was seemed random meeting at the time, but we just hit it off. She prayed for me, and we kept in touch, and she lives in a different state. And so, but over the years, we still pray together at least once a week, and we visited each other, and our husbands are good friends. And in fact, her husband married me and my husband because they're pastors. So we're, all that to say, yes, I got very discouraged at times, not that much though, because I decided, you know what, I'm going to enjoy my singleness. But the more you believe God is going to answer your prayer, the more you can enjoy being single, because when it's a season and it's a gift. Singleness is a gift and marriage is a gift. And when one season is over, and they're totally different, So, my life is totally different now as a married woman than it was as a single woman. And my husband makes me laugh, because sometimes he'll say, do you miss your pothole? Like, because when I was single, I always slept on this one side of the bed. And I guess I got a pothole in this mattress. And he'll be like, you want to go back to your pothole, don't you? And I'm like, no, I never want to go back to that pothole. But yeah, he's really, really funny. But I dedicated this book to my future husband. I said, I know you'll be worth the wait. And then I'm like, Lord, don't let me be put to shame. I mean, millions of women, not millions, but in my mind, millions of women, hundreds of thousands of women, are reading this book, and I've dedicated this book to my future husband. You got to bring him, So God did his part. And our part is to stay in faith, no matter what it takes. Find that friend that will, get on her knees with you, will cry with you. And I had more than one. There's a lady here at CBN, a really dear friend of mine too, Charlene. And she would literally cry and pray for me, because her husband, we were in the same boat waiting on husbands. Her husband came first. So then she prayed for me.
That's awesome. Friends like that are priceless. I have a friend, Sharon, who tells me the exact same thing. God will not withhold any good thing from his children.
That's right.
She tells me that all the time. So when you said that, I was like, wow.
Confirmation.
Confirmation. It is. And I know in the book you talk about red herrings, and I have actually had, a couple of red herrings in my life as well. One was recent. Like I said, I don't want to go into my personal life, but what would you say to women about those red herrings? The women that haven't read your book yet, hopefully they will after they see this interview. But what about the red herrings? I mean, the enemy sends those our way to distract us from what God has waiting for us. And I know that, but at the same time, it's so easy when you are so lonely to allow a red herring
Yes.
To come into your life.
Bless your heart, Christy. I know I can tell, I've been where you are, and I'm telling you, God is going to bless your socks off. I mean, you've come through so much, and God's not going to waste your pain. And whoever, broke your heart, they didn't see your value, and that's what I write about. Don't settle for less than God's best, because God's best is going to be willing to pay the price for the pearl of great price. And you are a pearl of great price. And even more so because of, what you've gone through. And now you're sharing your own testimony of surviving breast cancer. And, but what I love about you is you're not just interested in sharing your own story. Here you are interviewing me. You want to share other people's stories of who've overcome. Mm-hmm. And I guess if I overcame anything, it was the heartbreak. I mean, I have a whole chapter called Heartbreak Hotel, I think, just because, it's real. It's real. I had people, well-meaning people tell me, okay, just get back out there. Why are you, don't feel sorry for yourself. Just get up but if someone looked at me wrong, I would cry. I remember when my boss, I saw my boss, I was on my way to the studio to anchor a newscast. I was all hair and makeup, and my boss said, "How are you?" And I burst out in tears, and I was like, but God had told me, your work will be your refuge right now. And it was, because you know what? I had to get out of bed. I had to take a shower. I had to put makeup on. I had to go to work, and just being around, work was my refuge. So if somebody's out there, you're going through heartbreak, just in the word, not enjoy, but thank God that you have a job. Thank God that you have people around you that care about you, that you can, take your mind off and focus on something else other than your heartbreak, because it can be all consuming. So yeah, I wrote a chapter called Avoid the Counterfeits, and also a chapter about red herring, the red herring, which in the red herring is similar to the counterfeit. It is that thing that looks like the real thing. It smells like the real thing and acts like the real thing, but it's not the real thing. And the only way you can know it's not the real thing is if you and Jesus are talking a lot and you're actually listening to him. I was on my way back from a weekend away with this, not a weekend away, because we went to a family function and he was there. And so I was coming back and I saw a vanity plate that said red herring. And so, I got home and I looked up the meaning to make sure I knew what it was. And I'm like, okay, God. So that was, God was speaking, but I was tired of my lonely weekends, Christy. I was, I had church, I had the gym, I had, some friends, but it was just like Friday afternoon would come and I'd be like, what am I going to do now? And everybody's walking out the door to go home to their families and their kids or their girlfriend or their boyfriend. And I would really hate Friday afternoons if I had not thought ahead to like make some sort of plans. So that's when I really got into hiking, was in my 40s during that time, even before I met this guy, because hiking filled my weekends and I felt happy when I was hiking. Unfortunately, you don't meet that many guys hiking because it's usually people that are hiking with someone else. I was doing a lot of solo hiking because nobody wanted to drive 5 hours to the mountain and then hike 8 hours and then, drive home. So, I did hike with some friends, but I did a lot of solo hiking, but it was time well spent with the Lord. And, but so I do have a chapter about avoid the counterfeits, which a lot of people fall into that trap. And I did.
Yeah, I have too. I mean, recently, within the last year, I think I mentioned that to you on a private message one day. I kind of talked to you about that. And I completely, totally get how you threw yourself into your work and how that was a distraction from the heartache. I've done the same thing. I have a million projects going on. I go to college, I write books, I'm doing this show, I have a foundation. And I think sometimes that I think the more that I do, the less lonely I'll feel. And that's true during the day. But like you said, on Friday, I see people going out, and on the weekends, I think, and I just remember saying all last year, I wish I had somebody just to go to the movies with. I wish I had someone just to go riding around with.
But again, you've been married before, right? Long time ago. And I mean, look what God's done in your life since you defeated cancer, praise Jesus, by his stripes you are healed. And by the way, your hair looks amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So, and you took us on your journey, you took us on your cancer journey, and then even your hair journey. And, this is just the beginning, Christy. I mean, God has so much more for you, and, whoever it is, he'll be worth the wait, and maybe he'll be, since you've started a new show, maybe he'll be a TV guy.
Well, that would be great. That would be
but
great.
Only God knows. But I just want to encourage you and anybody else who's waiting, that your wait is not in vain, and your wait is not punishment, it's preparation. So take this time, but don't put your life on hold. I mean, I have a chapter in here called Be the Prize. Wear your red dress now. Go on that trip now, whether you go solo or you take a girlfriend. I mean, don't put your life on hold. I climbed Kilimanjaro single. I mean, I didn't know anybody till I got there. I had the most amazing time of my life. It was, that God gave me so many sermons out of that experience, so don't put your life on hold. Today is a gift and tomorrow's not guaranteed.
That's true. That's true. Well, Wendy, I just want to say thank you again for being on my show. We're having to wrap up. We're running out of time. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I loved your book. I recommend it to single women, married women, anybody. Give it to your aunts, your nieces, especially the younger, the better. Like, somebody who's a teenager needs to read this book, because we need to know what to look out for in life when it comes to relationships. But I just appreciate you taking time out from your day at work. You're in your dressing room right now, and I appreciate you taking out this time to be a guest on my show. And thank you so much. It's been an honor and a privilege to talk to you.
It's been my pleasure, Christy. God bless you, and have a great day.
Okay, thank you. You too.